on this. Good morning. This is Norma Cowie here with Norma Talks. I was going to say, I've got so many titles running around. I only have three. You think I would think of the right one on a Wednesday morning. Anyhow, it's Wednesday, and today we are going to be looking at the sword symbology within the tarot. Now, we all have issues that come along unexpectedly, and as we'll see as we go through, how do we deal with those becomes really, really important. And so I'm going to share my screen, and this is going to be a little dicey. We got it here. So, and then I realized, I don't know why that's dropped down. Sometimes I wonder about these things. I really do. Well, there we go. And also, I didn't realize I'd cut the one side here really tight. So it just makes, that's part of the sword elements. To me, the swords are problems, the problems we have in our lives. How do we handle them? What do we do with them? And so the ace, like all aces, are new beginnings. Number one, here we go with that. And it's like a new issue comes into the life. And this particular symbol taught me a lot. When I first began studying this, the way it was working, I found that it really helped me understand. An issue comes up. It doesn't necessarily even be a problem. It's just an issue. And you've got a choice. You can either deal with it right there and there and make a decision of what you want to do, or you come down here where you've got these 6 yards of light, they call it, or you can come into the confusion, because that's what this becomes. Number 6 is the confusion symbol in the higher arcana. And this can be mountaintops, or it also can be rough water. More likely rough water, because we have quite a bit of water that comes in the symbolism because of the emotionality. So here comes a problem, and we have to make the decision. If you deal with it and work with it, then that's pretty well the end of that, except we're human. So we come to number 2. Number 2, you'll see blindfolded, arms crossed, holding 2 swords. The moon, I believe that's waxing. There's a little bit of green down here, green in the way that the water works in here is a little bit of confusion again. Little rocks back in here. She doesn't want to accept what's beginning to happen. And that's what we do. You could call it putting your head in the sand. I don't want to know this. I want this just to go away. I don't want to be anywhere close to this. And so consequently, it's really a time period of denial, being in denial of what is. Now, if you do that, what begins to happen here, you end up with the 3 of Swords, which is absolute disappointment, hurt, pain, etc. There's nothing joyous in here. Rain, dark clouds, 3 swords. Now, 3 is the active number, it's the love number, it's all those elements. But in this case, it's like you're not activating it, you're not working with it, you're not doing anything. This is hurt, depression, sad, whatever you want to call it. And it just overwhelms you when that occurs. And I'm sure if you've lived at all in life, you've had some moments like that where it is all, just, you can't see the wood for the trees. It's all dark. And usually you begin to wonder what on earth you're going to do. And here's where number 4 comes in. And you'll notice in the symbolism, these 3 swords are now up on the wall here. There's a picture. In the picture, there's a maiden and a sort of a young child. It looks like they're playing a lute or something. And there's a line, the black line between it. Whoops, I didn't mean to do it that way. Hang on. There's a black line here. That black line is a lot to do with communication. How are we communicating with ourselves? Because this is like a meditation card. We're in meditation within, going within, and you'll see the full sword down here. It's figuring things out. And very often we have to go inside and come to terms with the hurt, the pain, the grief. We need to resolve that within ourselves. But I just got to have a little side story here. When I was in England going through some of the churches there, the way this person is put here, you have people like that, and you have people buried under the floor. And I had a terrible time having to walk across dead people. Just brings it back, because you would see these people all set up just like this in England. And yeah, it's like you need to be able to come aware of that. But if we don't start resolving, and I'm sorry this is cut off a bit here, I didn't realize it till too late, we get into conflict. Now, again, look at the symbolism. He's actually got 2 swords here from number 2, the extra 1 making 3. So here he is holding his hurt and pain, and now he has 2 more. The sky is very, very, all over the place like a storm. 2 people walking away. One's crying, the furthest away has got his head in his hands. The other one's just walking away. This person is obviously defeated. What often happens when there's conflict happening, we haven't gone inside like the 4 says. We end up coming out fighting, and because we don't want to be responsible. We don't want to deal with that, and we don't care if we hurt other people either. It's a stance that very often we go through, because we don't want to deal with our pain. And if you see here, even in the way he holds the 3 swords, 2 swords from number 2 with the extra 1 making the 3. And it's just like that original thing of denial is still going strong. So what's the answer? The answer is number 6. In number 6, the boatman here, when he's got a woman and a child, and so he's actually, the main thing here is assuming responsibility, and he's in a boat, very, very narrow little boat. It's not like a lot of breadth in it, and it's all 6 swords are there. On the one side, there's 4, then the other side 2. So the Anne's been inside, and he's come to terms with what's going on. Now, the water is rough on the front part of and it's moving into smoother things as it's like he crosses the river. And so to me, this is always about assuming responsibility and giving yourself time and space to get where you need to go. But, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what I find a lot with the sword symbology. This is what would be preferable, but this is what you tend to do. And that's number 7. It's the only yellow background in the whole thing, meaning you need to apply your intellect to this. So what is he doing? He's got 5 swords. So we go back here to the conflict. He's carrying 2 from the original 2 plus the 3. And he's sneaking away. We're down here. He's sneaking away from the camp where there's 2 more swords, and he's looking back. So he's sneaking. It's like, I'm getting away with this. I'm going to do this, but he's not even looking where he's going. And if he fell over or tripped, my goodness me, those swords would rip him apart. But it's kind of like something we do is we go into self-illusion that we've got it covered. We're doing the correct thing. We're going in the right direction, except we're not. We might be looking like we are, but we're not, because where do we end up? We end up with the 8. Now, a couple of things here that I've always find interesting, because when I read, I always look, where does my eye go? And how does it relate from this symbol to that symbol? I just want to point out in the background of this is the Castle of Dreams. In other words, there's the goal. But can this person see it? You've got, again, we got 3 swords on the right side of them. That's 3, the disappointment and hurt. We have the 5, which is conflict there. They're bound to a pole. They can't see with the blindfold. And in front is the river of life, which back here in number 2 is wide, and it's choppy in number 5, and 6 we're moving into plain, but here it's nothing but a few muddy puddles. So this is where we really feel trapped. We can't see what to do. We haven't dealt with the issue, which is the ace. The ace says deal with the issue. We're stuck. we don't know what to do. Actually, what you need to do if you're ever in this situation is something. Something is better than nothing. It's like doing the action that is necessary to move yourself in the area and the direction that you want, because if not, we end at 9. This is us feeling sorry for ourselves. All black. It's the only one that's all black, because the 10 it lifts, but all black, weeping, sad. And if you looked very closely on the bed here, the picture is a swordsman felling another one. In other words, again, you've been hurt. You've been, things have not really worked out well. The only bright spark is the quilt that's over the woman's legs. She's a woman, she's not a girl. The red roses of desire and astrological symbols. In other words, there's a way out. You have to desire to do something, which is basically get up off the bed and stop feeling sorry for yourself and start dealing with these issues. And again, just as it said right in the beginning, you've got choices. This is what I love about the swords. They always tell you how to get out. And then finally, if you don't do anything like that, the number 10 again says, okay, you've been slayed by this thing. There's 9 swords up your back. There's 1 in the sand beside the head, which is chopped off here. And if you look at this hand movement here, which comes, it shows up in several of the symbols, and it comes from the Hierophant, actually, which means more knowledge is needed. So but look at 2 things. The water is calm, and the blackness from the 9 is lifting, and the new dawn is there. You see, one of the things it says is there's no endings, there's only beginnings. There's a saying that I used a lot when I was, confronted with things that weren't going very, very well. And so the 10 of Swords, when it comes up, it says, yes, actually, I should back up a bit here. When I'm reading this particular symbol, where does my eye go? Does it go to the front of the card where the hand is? Does it go to the middle of the river? Does it go to the yellow? Where does it go? In other words, at the yellow, you're almost out of the time period of what you're going through. If you're right in the middle of the swords, well, you're in the middle of it, and there's probably many other symbols showing how, what, when, and where within any reading. But philosophically, this is probably the hardest thing that we deal with in life, is this coming from the 3 of Swords. When we're hurt, when we're sad, when we feel disappointed, and we don't know specifically what we're going to do and where we're going to go. But as you'll notice, it keeps telling us how to get out of it. If we don't do it in the beginning and we go into resistance of not wanting to accept, we're going to feel it. But the answer is inside. The key is to go inside. And if you don't go inside, you're going to come out fighting with more defenses, more awareness, and you can accept responsibility for that and begin to move yourself in a new direction, or else you're just compounding more and more and more issues that are really going to tie you up until it kind of, like the house of cards, it falls apart. And then it's like you have to start again, because of it, sometimes lessons repeat. And it is like we have lessons. Situations come up, and if we don't do it right the first time, you'll have it at some point, maybe not right away, but it will show up. We need to deal with it again. And so it's teaching always through the swords. Yes, they're not really the easiest things. And I know they'll say this is almost like the intellect. It's mental. It's a mental element. But we must know and learn how to cope with the emotionality. To me, a lot of the work I do is balancing out the mental and the emotional elements so that there's more harmony in the life. Sword symbology, it starts right at the beginning when you have an issue comes up. Instead of being in confusion, putting your head in the sand, deal with it, work with it. Now, underneath here, we have the 4 what I call attitudes, the court cards, the page. Again, somehow or other, the bottom part's it wasn't in my picture. It just sort of somehow worked this way. I'm kind of explaining. I had it, I thought, perfect. which I did yesterday, getting ready for this. Anyhow, attitudes is how you think, feel, and respond the most often. The swords to me is all about responding. How are we responding to the situation at hand? And the Page of Swords is usually very reactive. And I want you to notice a couple of things. In the sky here, I think I can make this a bit bigger, because the sky is really important in these cards, and that's too much because the king gets lost. There are birds here, and I'll do a quick count because it's not right on the top of my fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 birds in the shape of a fish. The early Christian sign was a sign of a fish. 10 is like a 1 in a sense, new beginnings, new awareness, but you've done the journey. So you're in reaction. This wind, if we look at where the tree is, which is cypress, which is death and sad and sorrow, on top of a little knoll, and you're fighting. You got your sword raised, you're ready to slash. You're not being very open at all. That is repeated more in the night here. And all the knights are on horses. And the gait of the horse, look how fast this horse is going in a rough ground. The tree, obviously against the wind, look at the tree, it's nearly falling over. Now our birds have been scattered, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is needing more, again, if we were reflecting it up to the higher arcana, which was the Hierophant, which is more knowledge needed. He's going fast, his faceplate is up. So again, he's not doing all the preparations he needs. So he's heading headlong, and everything is locked in. The butterfly, the birds, the little heart on his, I don't know. It's just also, when I look at this, it's like, just slow down. Think about this. What are you doing? Because action, knights are the action, and this is not going to get you where you want to go either. Now, then we come to the queen and the king. The queen sits in her throne, and there's the air of sylph, the sylph of air. This is an air symbol because swords are air, intellect, and the wind is calmed down. The trees are just there. Clouds are down. There's one bird in the sky. One is like the magician, all things are possible, but she's got her hands open. Oh, there's one thing I need to also point out. On her wrists, they've got the cords, and if you look at the 8 where they're bound, it's kind of like where she's been bound has been broken, so that she's not as bound. So she's got butterflies on her crown saying, I'm open, I'm ready, let's go. So she's all open, except guess what? Big sword right in front there. And she puts out a hand and says, come welcome. But sometimes I feel with this particular symbol, it's almost like an act. I'm okay. I've got it all figured out. I'm really good. You can come in. I'm open up to whatever. But yeah, I just always feel with this, you never know. This possibility might be okay, but you tread slowly and easily. If you are the queen, it's just like lay down the sword. Be open. Be prepared to communicate in a much clearer, easier way. And then the knight, in the sky here, which you can't see, there's 2 birds, which is the high priestess. There's choice, always a choice. What I like about this knight, this king, sorry, what I like about this king, and I always have, when I see this in a reading, and quite often when I'm reading for men, this comes up. I know if I'm intellectual, not emotional, they will listen. If I get emotional, which I can do, and use emotional words, you lose them right away. This is very clear on what he wants. Everything is pretty stationary. The 2 birds are the big key. The butterfly on his throne is encased in the 2 moons. There's 3 butterflies and people, but there's an openness to this king. There's an openness, but it has to make sense. Quite often the emperor, which is pretty strong and stubborn, and this guy will come together in a reading. So you've got someone you can't use emotionality here. If you were to use emotional words or anything, you would lose them. They would think you're crazy and nuts. But if you can be logical and if you can bring it through, they will open up. Like, it's beautiful to see, actually. They just open right up. And in that openness, then it's like it's all there. And they'll listen and they'll take to heart to what you say and they will go ahead and use it. So I'm just going to stop this share for a moment so I can just talk a little bit more here. But what I found, what I learned, particularly when I was trying to figure out what these were saying to me, which is more, as people know, I'm a psychological reader. I'm reading for you to grow and understand how the law of love works in our world, how everything comes together in our world. And it all with the swords, honestly, it's all with this first symbol. You've got a choice. You've got to decide if you're going to deal with the situation or you're going to bury your head in the sand and not, which will create more confusion and more things. And I'll tell you, for a lot part of my life, I was a bear, put my head in my sand. But it did teach me that, you at least be honest with you. Know what it is that you need to do and understand, and it will occur and will come forth. So we have an intellect, but we also have an emotional ability that, from my consensus, is that we need to bring the two together. And by bringing the two together, we're balanced and we can access what we need to access when we have it. You'll notice that in the 6 was talked about responsibility. To be responsible for your actions to get you where you want to go, and taking others on the way with you, because it wasn't just one boatman, and they had a woman and a child in there. So these symbols of these things have the multi levels that you can go through. But I find sometimes just a very basic way of looking at the journey as to how they laid out. There was such an incredible job done when they first created these ones. These were the first people that created the lower arcana into pictures. And I just think they had great understanding of human nature. And consequently, and the author, Pamela Coleman Smith, has just done an incredible job to put those together. So I just want you to be aware that if you have an issue in your life, you can resolve it. It doesn't have to bury you. And then sometimes it's just by assuming responsibility for your part of it, because often we don't want to assume responsibility for what our part in whatever's gone on. And sometimes it's just really important to be able to do that. So that is the 3rd suit. Remember, we had a little break last week because we were looking at this month. And next week, we'll look at the Pentacles, which is a whole different story. So I want you to have a good week. I will be back on Sunday for a Sunday Thought, and again on Monday for Mental Mind Treatments. I really do want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for the subscriptions, the comments, all those things. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you Sunday.